In 2017, two boys who were playing near the Mutange Dam in Zimbabwe noticed something peculiar in the water. When they went to investigate, they were pulled below the surface. Strangely, a group of witnesses who were there and said that they saw the whole thing said that the boys were snatched and drowned by a mermaid. Hello, and welcome to Rope. So, where do mermaids come from? Well, legend has it that over 3,000 years ago, in the forgotten land that was once called Assyria, a man had a romance with a real-life goddess. A Targetess was more beautiful than all of the other earthly women combined, and she was deeply lost in love with her mortal lover. It was a love affair for the ages, to be sure. But then one day, the Targetess, being so much more powerful than her human partner, quite accidentally killed him during an act of love. And this spiraled the Targetess into a Great Depression. Unable to deal with such strong emotions and feeling completely unworthy to live any longer as a goddess, the Targetess, using all of her power, cast herself into a lake, intending on transforming herself into a fish, forever to mourn her lost love. However, her majesty and her beauty were just too great, and her intention was only halfway realized. She did indeed turn the lower half of her body into a fish, but the upper half, well, it remained beautiful. And it has been said that over the millennia, she has duplicated herself into every major body of water on Earth. Now, whenever she sees a man, she instantly wells up with emotion and calls to him, remembering her lost lover. But then, once he approaches, she quickly realizes that this man is not her lover, and this angers her. And it brings out her hatred, and she latches onto him and pulls him deep below the surface, holding him there until he just can't hold his breath any longer. And then he gasps, filling his lungs with mouthfuls of water, killing him painfully, slowly, drowning him. And the very last thing that he sees is her face. The Targetess is, of course, just one origin story for the mermaid, the most popular one. But there are others. Oannes is a half-man, half-fish creature from Mesopotamian mythology, and sirens come from Greek mythology. Interesting thing about sirens is their connection to rope. The etymology of the name is contested. Robert Beeks has suggested a pre-Greek origin, but others connect the name to Sira and Iro, meaning to fasten or to bind together with a rope. In this video, we're going to explore the possibility that mermaids do indeed exist. And we'll do this by first citing different accounts throughout history where people have come forward and stated that they themselves have personally seen a mermaid. And then we'll take a look at an account that happened just a few years ago near the Mutange Dam in Zimbabwe, where, believe it or not, a group of witnesses swore that they saw a mermaid drown two boys. And then stay with us for our fact or fiction section. There, I'm going to take just a minute and give you my thoughts on the mermaid. And then Amy is going to come on, and she's going to share some very interesting information that she found about a futuristic device that is used underwater and functions a lot like the tricorder from Star Trek. I can't wait to share that interview with you. So, this report begins at the end of the 15th century. Would it surprise you to know that accounts of mermaids aren't just confined to the pages of legend? Sightings have been reported all through history and from nearly every corner of the world. It's pretty well known that on January 9th, 1493, Christopher Columbus recorded seeing 3 mermaids off of the coast of what is now the Dominican Republic.
On my visit to the Rio del Oro yesterday, I saw 3 mermaids standing high out on the water. They had faces something similar to those of human beings, but were not so handsome as it was customary to represent them.
Right around the turn of the 19th century, several people in and around the small town of Thurso, Scotland, claimed to have gotten a glimpse of a mysterious female creature that appeared to live in the sea. In 1797, a schoolteacher named William Monroe was walking along the beach when he saw what at first glance appeared to be a naked woman sitting out on one of the rocks in the ocean. The only problem was the rock that she was sitting on was way too far out into the water. It was an extremely dangerous place for any human to be sitting.
It looked just like a human woman, but it was sitting on a rock that was far too dangerous for bathing.
William was walking on a path that was elevated, and he was looking down into the water when he came across the sight. He stopped, and he said that he was able to get a good look at her, or, as he says it. It
remained on that rock 3 or 4 minutes as I observed it.
He said that it was basking in the sun and proudly brushing its hair.
It had brown hair, the forehead was round, and the face was plump, the cheeks ruby, and the eyes blue.
William could only see it from the waist up, and to him it looked just like a normal woman with a normal abdomen, breasts, hands, fingers. He said he tried to make out whether the fingers were webbed or not, and wasn't able to. And then he said that it noticed him looking, and immediately it slipped off the rock and into the water. He said that before this incident, several people had come forward, stating that they too had seen something similar out in the water, but he never believed the stories. And he said that if he hadn't seen it himself, he would have just went on, not believing those stories. Around the same time, a woman named Miss McKay, the daughter of Reverend McKay, claimed that she was walking along the shore with her cousin when they came across a small group of people gazing out into the water with astonishment at something. McKay and her cousin rushed to see what the group was looking at when they saw, sitting out in the water just a few yards away, what appeared to be a mermaid.
The face was plump and round. The eyes were gray, and the eyes and nose were small. The mouth was large, and from the shape of the jawbone, which seemed straight, the face looked short. The forehead and nose and chin were white. The whole side face was bright pink. The head was exceedingly round, and the hair was thick and long.
Miss McKay said that the creature's hair was gray and oily. She said that it was petite with a slender throat and slender arms. She said that its fingers were not webbed. She and the other bystanders stayed and watched it up close for over an hour. These sightings went on for a while, and some of them were even recorded in the newspaper. Then there was Phineas Taylor Barnum, also known as P.T. Barnum. He was an American showman who was mostly remembered for creating and running the Barnum and Bailey Circus. Believe it or not, he obtained the carcass of a real flesh and bone mermaid. Many people today believe that this, of course, was a hoax, but it was examined by several doctors at the time who verified that it was in fact not some sort of wax dummy or other poorly made prop, but rather a real live animal of some type. It had a human-like head, what seemed to be an upper torso, and then a tail fin for the lower half of its body. During the mid-1800s, Barnum even took it on tour. Known as the Fiji Mermaid, he exhibited it in New York, Boston, London, and other cities. Although classified as a mermaid, P.T. Barnum's mermaid was very different from the mermaids depicted in mythology. As a matter of fact, it was hideous. In his autobiography, Barnum described the mermaid like this.
It was an ugly, dried-up, black-looking, diminutive specimen, about 3 feet long. Its mouth was open, its tail turned over, and its arms thrown up, giving it the appearance of having died in great agony.
Unfortunately, we no longer have this carcass. Somewhere around 1859, it dropped out of the historical record. No one's been able to locate it since. Christopher Columbus's experiences were in the 1400s. The mermaid sightings in Scotland took place around the turn of the 19th century, and P.T. Barnum's mermaid, Fiji, was taken on tour and displayed in the mid-1800s, nearly 200 years ago. But surely, here, in the modern era, we know that there's no such things as mermaids, right? Not according to Samuel Como, the water resource minister in Zimbabwe. In 2012, a dam broke. And Como? Well, he started a war with mermaids. In January of 2012, the Mutange Dam in Zimbabwe suddenly and quite mysteriously stopped working. Divers were sent into the murky waters to investigate. Before they could locate the problem, however, they returned to the surface, terrified and refusing to go back. When asked why, all they could say was that there was something down in the water. They could feel the presence of something evil and unnatural. Many reported being grabbed by an unknown person with hands or tentacles or something else. So new divers were hired and dispatched, but they too returned before they were able to find out what was wrong with the dam, reporting the exact same mysterious experiences as the first team. This challenge went on for a while, and finally, after several teams were hired and quit, the damage was located, and a plan was drawn up to repair the dam. This, of course, would require more divers, so a new team was hired to dive into the murky waters and make the repairs. Incredibly, believe it or not, on their very first dive, these repairmen, these new divers, returned to the surface before they even began to work. And just like the investigative teams had done, they too refused to go back into the water, stating that there was definitely something down there. The man in charge, Water Resource Minister Samuel Como, couldn't hire people fast enough. To make matters worse, after being dispatched to the bottom of the lake and experiencing whatever it was that they experienced down there, many of them just quit right then and there. They just walked off of the job, and some of them were reported to have vanished into thin air, and they were never seen or heard from again. Things got so bad that by February 3rd, 2012, Como went before Parliament, and he explained the problem. And when he was asked why the workers refused to go back into the waters, he officially reported that mermaids had been terrorizing his workers. Well, the Senate and Como agreed that mermaids or no mermaids, the dam had to be repaired. So Como doubled and tripled his efforts. And finally, only after several more workers either quit or vanished, the dam was repaired. But that was just the beginning of the story. After the dam was repaired, mysterious and tragic things happened in and around the area. On several occasions, people reported seeing stones flying about on the waters in an aggressive fashion, as if to say, "Get out, this is our territory." Occasionally, people who otherwise were known to be competent swimmers mysteriously drown in the waters near the dam. Most recently, in 2017, a group of school-age boys were horsing around near the dam. They were laughing, teasing each other, just having a good time being boys. But then, one of them spotted what looked like to be a huge fish in the water, so he and another boy peeled themselves away from the group and headed over to investigate. The group later said that this thing was moving in a playful fashion and carelessly splashing in and around the rocks and just below the surface. Curious, the two boys waded out toward it, and it would quickly pop up in one area. They would turn their attention toward it, and then it would dive below the surface and pop up in another area. The group that had stayed back moved to the edge and watched as both boys dove into the water trying to capture this strange creature. But when the boys didn't resurface, the group got nervous. At some point, adults made their way over to the crowd and they too began watching the commotion. And about that time, both boys shot up out of the water, grabbed onto a rock, and were gasping for air, holding on for dear life. Now, this is where the story takes a turn and gets extremely strange and tragic. As the group on the shore was watching, something intelligent and purposeful sprang up out of the water behind the boys, latched on to both of them, and then deliberately pulled them off of the rock and back below the surface, keeping them under the water until they drowned. Now, check this out. Later, when asked, what exactly was it that came up out of the water and snatched those boys off of that rock, all of the witnesses said it was a mermaid. Chief Ngamwe, a man who oversees the area where the drownings happened, said that he believes it was a mermaid.
A mermaid was sighted basking on the bank several times prior to this drowning. 2 other people that I am aware of were also killed at the same dam in similar circumstances.
I know what you're thinking. Mermaids? Rope? You've gone too far this time. But before you write us off altogether, know this. According to the website Ocean Exploration, there could be as many as 750,000 unknown species yet to be discovered in the ocean. 750,000 species that we know nothing about. Before we get into the incident at the Mutange Dam in Zimbabwe, a quick note about P.T. Barnum's Fiji Mermaid. Most of the world considers that to be a hoax. But remember, society no longer has that evidence to examine, so calling it a hoax really is just speculation. Granted, speculation based upon solid educated guessing, but speculation nevertheless. So, are there mermaids in the waters near the Mutange Dam? I don't know. My first urge is to say, of course not. It must be misunderstood sightings of some type, people believing the tall tales of others. But the story about the men refusing to go back into the waters to repair that dam really did take place. And these were grown men. And it wasn't just one man or a handful. It was several groups of men who would rather be out of work than to dive back into those waters. And who am I to say, standing here in the comfort of my own house, that they don't know what they're talking about? And it was an entire group of people standing on the shore who swore they saw a mermaid come up out of the water and snatch those 2 boys and drown them. Were they all lying or delusional? While I was putting this report together, Amy did some research on a device that she says operates underwater and acts a lot like the tricorder from Star Trek. Right?
That's right.
So today we're talking about mermaids. What do you have for us today?
All right. So I want to start by telling you there's this doctor named Dr. Joseph Dituri, and he recently broke a world record, May 2023, in fact, for 100 days living underwater.
Oh, wow.
So he was in a pod that is built. It's called a habitat. It was only, I think, about 100 square feet, very small. He had a microwave. He's got, it's a 2-bedroom, right? So scientists could actually come and visit him during his stay. He's got a setup. So he actually taught classes. He's a professor. He taught classes and did interviews in this space. And he studies hyperbaric pressure. He's got a PhD in biomedical engineering.
What is hyperbaric? Can you explain that to us?
So at 22 feet underwater, there is 70% more pressure on the body than there is when we're on land.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so hyperbaric.
Even though you're not touching the water, right? Even if you're in this bubble of air, there's still this pressure.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so he was down there and, not necessarily to break a world record, which it's so funny. The previous record was his anyway.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And just a caveat, that doesn't include active naval personnel, right? This is separate from that. Anyway, so what they are finding this hyperbaric pressure does,
right?
Medically, it increases the oxygen in the blood.
Okay.
Right there, so many health benefits. It decreases inflammation. So for things like lupus, those types of inflammatory diseases.
Right.
It improves sleep, which I thought you would love to know.
Yeah, it'd be great. Sleep, it's like a foreign concept to me.
Right. And it increased the depth of sleep, right? So it's not like, oh, well, he slept 14 hours. No, but the depth of sleep he got was greatly increased.
Quality of sleep.
Quality of sleep, yep. It also enhances brain function.
Wow.
Yeah.
Something you wouldn't need.
Oh, gosh, thanks.
Biggest brain I've ever seen.
And then the other increase was stem cells and telomeres, which is the science is, they kind of going back and forth, right, on the effects of telomeres, but
so extend your life,
in
maybe.
general, he says, you
could live longer.
Possibly anti-aging stuff going on.
So you're saying that maybe living underwater could be much healthier for an individual and maybe live longer. That's insane. Before we sat down, though, you said that there was this really cool device. And I'm really excited about this part. You said it's like some futuristic device like you would see on Star Trek, some medical device. Tell me about that.
All right. So some of the work that Dr. Daturi was doing is also for NASA, right? NASA's gearing up to send astronauts to Mars. There's all kinds of issues with that. So one of the devices he was studying was similar to what you showed me on Star Trek, is the tricorder. The Daily Mail did a whole piece on this. Super exciting, right?
So just like in the movies or in the series, you take this device, you point it at someone, you wave it over them like a magic wand, you read it, and it tells you they may have kidney problems or something like that. Is that truly what it's starting to do?
It's something, yes, something very similar. Of course, they're not letting the cat out of the bag on the details of this, not even the name at this point.
We're living in the future.
I know, right?
What? Okay, before we go, I have to ask this question. So, what do you think? Do you believe that there is a possibility, no matter how, it sounds insane to me, that there really could be mermaids somewhere in the oceans?
Oh my gosh. So, of course, I have to give a caveat, right? But I'm thinking about the percentage of ocean we haven't even discovered, right?
Right.
And a lot of people who say there can't be mermaids, there's all these studies on why humans can't breathe water, gills, cold blood versus warm blood, all that. And I got to thinking, there are mammals in the ocean. We've got whales that come up and breathe air. We've got dolphins. So, with those things together, there could be mermaids in the ocean.
So you're leaving it open.
I'm leaving it open, but I do think that such an animal, human-animal hybrid, I don't know what you would call it, but
it's
maybe
possible.
Yeah, maybe it could exist.
That's insane. All right. Well, again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, do you believe in mermaids? Intelligent creatures that live in the waters? This report reminds me of the Filiberto Gardenias case. He was a man who, interestingly, was out looking for a pig one day when he was abducted by aliens. Aliens who live underwater. They abducted him right in front of one of his good friends, and then they took him to a base deep inside of the ocean, where he saw a multitude of aliens and humans living and working side by side. While he was there, he was shown a map of the Earth, and on the map, he was shown other bases in different oceans, and he was told that these aliens had been living in these underwater bases here on Earth for a very, very long time. We did a complete report on this, and if you'd like to see it, it's here.
Check out our Fourth Wall store. It's in the video description. And get your own piece of rope.
Yes.
Okay.
Everything she said.
I was going to say you could wear rope, but that's just wrong. Going to jail. We're going to go to prison for these.